Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of I Am the Universe with Martin Cowart. And I am so excited about our guest today, Uche. Uche is a heart-centered African leader who's going to talk about, well, let him tell us what you're going to talk about. Welcome to the show, Uche. Let me take you off mute and let's hear what you got. What do you want our audiences to really find out about us today?
Am I muted? Hi, hello everyone. My name is Uche. I am the founder of Uche Chukwu LLC, which is a platform for a life coaching. My ultimate goal is to explain to people that God is being itself, not a being, but being itself, which implies that God is a process, not a being.
Well, that's a very important distinction because we've all been raised with this thought that God is a thing and God is a no thing. And from my experience, God is the universe and we are the universe. And when we realize that we're the universe, that's why you're on the show, because we agree. God is not a thing, God is not a noun to be believed in. God is the experience of life itself. It is a being. That's beautiful. So stick around today, and you're going to find out from a different person, a man from Africa, actually, about what it is to really discover the truth about who we are. That we're not some just separate entity. We are the universe itself. We are that being, and that's our power, and that's how we win. Before we get to that, every show I dedicated to someone who's made a big influence on my life, and today I want to dedicate this show to Brene Brown. Brene Brown I'm a speaker, and I watched her famous TED Talk many years ago. She did a TED Talk, one of the most popular, it's out there on vulnerability. And she will tell you that sharing your story is the bravest thing you will ever do, particularly in public. But if you really want to make an impact on the world, you got to be in that place of vulnerability to share our stories so people can understand. And so I've always taken that lesson from her, and she's influenced me. And every time I'm going to give a major speech somewhere, I'll go back and I'll watch that TED talk of her on vulnerability because the format of it and the direction of it is just one of the best I can think of. And it really helps me get clear in my mind about the purpose of me getting up and giving a public speaking in the first place. So this show today is dedicated to Brene Brown, one of my favorite influencers today. So Uche, I'm going to take you off. I know you got some lawn service going on over there, but I'm going to take you on, put you back on where we can hear you, and make sure you're unmuted. And then tell us about your story. Tell us how you got to this place of really understanding that you're the universe itself. That God is not a thing, but God is who we are. It is it. It is it. It is it.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Martin, for welcoming me on your show. I really do appreciate it. It's always wonderful connecting with another human being who gets it, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And like I mentioned, I am the host of the podcast and YouTube. Let's talk about us with Uche. Feel free to find me on there, and also the founder of my LLC, Uche Chukwu, which is focused on counseling and coaching Africans, Black, and LGBTQ Africans who are finding themselves in a systemically racist and homophobic world. And I know it's a lot. And my inspiration is basically me, going through this life, finding out myself, figuring out myself. A lot of things, if you're African or familiar with the African traditional, typical Nigerian family dynamic, you understand that there's a lot of things that we were raised with religiosity, Christianity, whether it's Christianity or Islam. God is this way, God is a patriarch figure, a man, a white man, actually. Like there's so many different things. I call them ornaments of God that we were given as children. And I embraced those as a child, just like everyone else, until I got much older, moving to America at such a young age and going through real life situations. And it shook those ornaments, and those ornaments came crashing down so easily. And I walked away from what I thought was God at the time. I turned my back from the church and caved into myself to find myself so I don't crash and burn. And caving into myself, I had like an epiphany like, hey, I thought I walked away from God, but no, actually, I walked away from man made God and I walked into God within. And then I started to see things from a totally different perspective. And the way I like to describe it is it felt as though I was walking through a neighborhood that I knew I had never been to before, yet it felt familiar. So that curiosity, incentivized me to keep searching for more and searching for more. And the more I searched and seeked, just as the Bible said, to search and seek, the more I found more answers. Like, okay, answers that pulled away from traditionally what was indoctrinated to us as what God is, and answers that prove that, yes, there's a lot more to this God and to the universe than the man made definition. So here I am.
Yeah, God's much bigger than the petty little limitations we put around him, isn't he?
Yes.
First, it's not a him, it's not a her, it is everything and it is nothing.
Yeah.
you know and what people don't realize is, and this is, I would love to go hear a little bit about this, is but people don't realize that Jesus was really a teacher of non-duality. He was a teacher of what we know today as the quantum field. He was kind of like the Joe Dispenza of his time, long before we had all the electronics and all the understanding of science. But if you look at his teachings and listen to what he was teaching us, you will discover that all that belief nonsense that they teach you in Bible school is not true. He didn't teach any of that stuff. He never said any of those things. He didn't. He said the only thing he really told us to do for sure was to love your God with all your heart and all your might and all your soul, which is you love yourself and love your neighbor as yourself, because we're all one. That is really the principles that he taught. And if you really want to look at the stuff, go look at the Beatitudes. But I'd love to hear your thought on just one of the misunderstandings of the church about what Jesus would taught. It could be something like repent, which didn't mean that at all. It meant to transcend the limiting mind. Is there something that the church teaches that is just blatantly incorrect that you would like the listeners to understand it from the wisdom perspective?
Hmm. I have to be careful here so I don't offend religious people, because I know how religious a lot of Africans are, quite
Mhm.
interestingly. Um, so, disclaimer, this is not to bash religion or anything like that. I don't consider
I'm not
myself
here to bash.
Christian,
I'm not here to bash religion. I'm here to wake people up to the truth. That's all I'm here
of
for.
course.
I'm not here to put
Of
anything
course.
down. I'm just here to wake people up to the truth of who they are.
Of course. And I talk about these things on my YouTube and my podcast a lot, but it's just my style to give a disclaimer first because you know how the
That's
internet
fine.
is.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to offend anybody. So thank you for that. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's great. Yep. Mhm.
Exactly. So, disclaimer, this is not to bash anyone. I don't consider myself religious nor Christian at all. However, contrary to what a lot of people believe about me, I actually do read the Bible religiously. I actually had a Bible study yesterday. I read the Quran. I have a Quran and the Torah, which I read. I'm very interested in religion. And you see how a lot of those religions are basically saying the exact same thing. In as much as I do agree with a lot of the basic Christian principles, not because they're Christian per se, but because it is in alignment with the oneness of the truth of all. I feel like one of the things that differs from my perspective on Jesus is how Christians see Jesus. I see Jesus as a man, just like you and I. And I do believe that Jesus is someone who was able to tap into that oneness of all at a much younger age. And he stayed at that high vibration till his death, which is something a lot of people may not necessarily attain in this lifetime, or some people do attain it, but much older. And the disadvantage of attaining that higher vibration at a much older age is because you have a lot more distortion as you get older. You have a lot of these ego, false sense of self that has carved your mind, and it's
Mhm.
just much difficult for you to um, disassociate yourself from the indoctrinations of the word and focus into the oneness of all. But Jesus was able to attain that at a much, much younger age, and he grew up with it. So I believe that Jesus is sort of like the blueprint of what you as a human being can attain if you follow the principles that he followed. This is why he said that he has come to show us the way. So he is a man. He didn't do anything that you couldn't do. But unfortunately, in my opinion, Christians put him on a pedestal and worship the man, which is not any different from worshiping Beyonce, Obama, Trump, or whoever. You're worshiping a human being. You're worshiping an idol. You miss the point of his message. Is that making sense?
Absolutely. Let me talk about that for a second. We did two things when we started the church. First of all, the biggest mistake was we separate. Jesus was trying to teach we're all one, but when we created a church of believers, we said, okay, if you believe, you're going to heaven. If you don't believe, you're not going to. We divided humanity into two camps. That was the first mistake we made. Because we created the illusion that if I believe this, I'm going to heaven. That's not what Jesus taught. Jesus did not teach that. He taught unity. He taught oneness, like you said. So that was one of the things that we got off to the wrong foot on. The second thing was what you just said. We made Jesus better than human. We took away the human part. We made him only divine. The whole point of the message is that God came down as a human being to show us we're all divine too. Follow me. I am the light. I am the light didn't mean I am the man, the light. It means I am the light. You say it, I say it. It's all still true. I am the light. Follow me. You go out, Uche, you go out, Martin, and you tell people, I am the light. Follow me. That's what we're supposed to do. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that what we're doing? And then what they also did to make things even worse for women is they put women down and they made Mary Magdalene a prostitute, which is not true either. She was probably his lover in a sense of, I would say, from what I'm reading and what I understand from the other gospels that got ripped out of the Bible, like the Gospel of Mary, that they had a very intimate, loving relationship, but it was not objectification. It was about subjectification. They meld into a higher level of spiritual consciousness, and it makes no sense to me whatsoever that God would have come down as a human being and not enjoyed the beauty of procreation, of sex. He created sex. It's fun. I did a show not too long ago back at Pride called "The Truth Is, It's Time to Tell the Truth." Jesus was a bisexual. Because there's stuff in the Bible, I can tell you, in the secret Gospel of Mark, where Jesus clearly had an experience with a young boy. And it's like, there's no doubt about what they're saying. There's no doubt about it. And we had a lot of fun talking. And that's the only time I've really gotten some hate mail in my podcast, because that really makes, you talk about upsetting some people. When I said Jesus was truly a bisexual, that put people into orbit. So you're speaking my language, brother. Thank you so much.
Oh man, Martin. Yes, yes, and yes. It's interesting how we're talking about this now, but I'm also getting ready to shoot a video and a podcast episode where I want to tell people that we don't know God. And I'm going to use Bible verses to prove that we don't know God. And just kind of like give you an insight of what I'm going to be talking about is Jesus's message, ultimate message is divine love. Divine, not just love, but divine love, right? So divine means something that is pure, celestial, beyond time. This is something that has no polar opposite, right? Not love, because we've corrupted love. Love, we call it lust, we call love. We have situational, transactional love and all that nonsense. But divine, so divine that even if I know that you're plotting to kill me, I will still love you.
Yes. That is unconditional love. You love without any conditions whatsoever.
Yes. So now, in as much as God or Jesus came, well, God came in human form, in the form of Jesus, to preach divine love and basically say, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Look at the world we're living right now. There is no divine love in the hearts of a lot of people. We live in a very selfish world. Everyone's trying to take advantage of you. People will only hit you up if there's something beneficial. If you look a certain way, have money, there's always something for me to take from you. If not, I don't see you, if that makes sense. And then even when you look in the religion, forget about other religions, even within the Christian religion, there's so many different denominations that don't even agree with each other. They're all Christians, but you're not agree with each other. I've seen so many Christians fight against whose church is better than the other. Even when you look at the family dynamics, there's so much patriarchy, so much misogyny, so much hatred, so much lying, so much backstabbing, so much animosity, which defeats the purpose of Jesus's, message, which is why he said that your righteousness is as filthy rags. But people don't want to talk about that.
Well, if you use the word righteousness, I've listened to a lot of work by this. You might love this. Is the Reverend Cynthia Bourgeau? She has a wonderful book called The Wisdom Teachings of Jesus, and she talks about the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes are the most condensed version of what Jesus taught, really. And she talks about the word righteousness. And it's not what people think it is. It means to have a right heart open to being receptive to God. It doesn't mean that I am right and you're wrong, that I live a life of purity or anything like that, or I am anyway right and you're wrong. It gets interpreted as that, like I'm a righteous person. I was nice to her and she treated me so bad. That's all confusion. What Jesus was teaching was, if you come to, you've got to come to get into the kingdom of heaven, you've got to come with an open, receptive heart, the right heart, an open heart, receptive for the divine to come in. That's what that means. And so that's why it's interesting how we've taken like the word repent, for example. Repent means to go beyond the mind. It means to go into a field beyond the mind. It doesn't have anything to do with repent for your sin, like we try to make it. It has to do with transcending the ego thinking mind to a higher level mind, to a higher consciousness, which is way beyond his time. He was a revolutionary teacher, wasn't he?
Definitely a philosopher, yes. And a lot of things that Jesus talked about has been taken out of context, which is why I confidently say that a lot of the so-called people who worship him today would be the same people who would kill him if he was alive today, because of what his message has been so corrupted to look. It's become so egotistic. When people talk about Christianity, when people talk about religion, righteousness, it's become holier than holy. We against them. You have to look a certain way to get to be one with Jesus.
Well, take it to the extreme. Take it to the extreme. Take it to the kill the gay law in Uganda, brought to them by Christian white missionaries. They told them that it was okay to kill your children. They made it legal to kill your children in Uganda if they come out as gay. Now that is in the name of God. And look what they do in Muslim in the name of Allah. This is not religion. That's why we gave that show, because I don't mind offending people like that. I want to wake them up to the truth, because they're dangerous. They're causing harm to our friends and our family and our loved ones. So it's not just we got to be nice and sweet about everything. We got to, because people are dying. People are in danger. People are getting their heads chopped off in Afghanistan right now. And, and people in Uganda are being stoned to death for being gay. Can you imagine? You tell your parents that you're gay, they're going to take you out and stone you to death.
Yeah.
So I think we have a responsibility, and also based on the teaching, is to love these people and wake them up, and not to blame them, but to love them into truth.
Hmm.
I
And
love
also,
to
intentionally educating. To church today, review and translation. That's truly right. Okay, so I'm gonna just continue. It's educating, but then also, being humble enough to just have a discourse. Because you have people's opinions and your opinions. You want to make sure that you are getting to people and not just talking to people. And I always, going back to the whole religious thing, I read the Bible very diligently. I do believe that a lot of what the Bible says, a lot of the Bible contains the absolute truth within it. However, a lot of it has just been sugar-coated with all kinds of nonsense that people miss the true essence. Going back to the starting from the book of Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, I don't believe that the Garden of Eden is a literal place. I do believe that is a representation of the masculine and the feminine energy, masculine being Adam, the doer, and Eve being the feminine, the thinker, and together form the human being. And I believe that both of these two were in perfect calibration, they were one with God, hence why Adam and Eve were able to communicate with God. But after that, they have failed, like they fell from grace by going against the teachings of God. then that spiritual connection with God was stripped away from them. And why did they fail? Because they did that they knew they shouldn't do. This is why I say that God is not a being, but God is being itself, which means that God is a never ending process. And based on what you do, your actions determine the next course of actions. So if you know good, and you know good, every one of us, we know good. Even Jesus talks about this as well. You know, a lot of spiritual teachers talks about this. A lot of philosophers talk about this. I believe it's sensu divinitatis or something like that. I know Immanuel Kant, one of my favorite philosophers, talks about. He calls it the moral law is within you. You know what's good and what's not good. Some Christians call it the Holy Spirit. When you abide with that and do what is right, what is natural, with love, you are in alignment with that infinite process of God. But when you go against that, you know you shouldn't do, which is do not eat from the forbidden tree. Then you die, not physical death, but death in spirit. You are now misaligned with God, and the wages of that is sin. And you have, because of that death in spirit, or that fall from grace, a collective fall from grace. This is why you have so many. I don't want to sound condescending, but let's keep it real. Zombified humans around. A lot of people are not connected to that oneness of God, and then because we're disconnected from that spirit, we're doing all of these cheap things. Patronizing the physicality because we're trying so desperately to reconnect with the spirit of God that we lost. And what we have is a hot mess. This is why the word is reeking of sin.
Yeah, that is exactly you exactly right. There's a word now that a lot of people don't like. It's usually people who are not woke, and that is a word that came from the black church called woke. And I'm loving the fact that what we're doing is we're waking people up. Now the good news here is this: is that what I'm discovering is that a lot of people woke up. I know I woke up a lot more during the pandemic. I have a belief that the universe said, okay, guys, I give you this beautiful place called planet Earth. I give you all the power of the creator itself. This gorgeous place to live. And all you have done is fuzz, complain, tear it up, and fight each other. Everybody's going to go to their room until they can come out and be grateful. And a lot of people did. I know I did. I know I came out of that time period much more grateful for my life and other people's life, realizing that life is precious and what really matters are human connections with people. And that is the new movement of the world. And a lot of people, and that's why you're having the great resignation from companies. People don't want to just go work for someone. They want to connect with people. They want to be in relationship with other people. And that's what Jesus taught. Everything is when you do two or more are gathered in my name, which is the name of love, the love of the universe, the love of yourself. When two people are gathered in the name of love, let's just make it easy, great things will happen. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about here. And that's what you and I are part of this movement. I call it a movement to bring us into a whole new way of looking at the world. And we're on fire. I was just at a conference for the Diocese of New York, of Newark, and we have a Black female bishop who is on fire. And her whole message at the convention was this: the old church is dead, the building, all that stuff is over. The beauty is this: God is already creating her new church. We're already following it. And it doesn't look anything like the old church. It doesn't look like a building where people have to go and get a piece of wafer. We could be building that church in a community in Africa, which is what I'm doing. It's a community built on love. It's a world built on love. And that is what God is at work at today, if you want to call it God. I don't use that word because it's got too many connotations. That is what the universe is up to today. The universe is already doing it. All we have to do is to say yes and go along with it. That's it.
Yeah.
And quit fighting it, because it's so much bigger than we think. It is so much more gorgeous. It's gorgeous. When you get into the space of the zone of genius, I see the world from a place of beauty and love. I see you from a place of beauty and love. Precious. Life is precious. Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
To add to what you said, yes, it's already happening. And these are written in the Bible as well. A lot of spiritual teachers have talked about this. Even like I always say, you don't have to be you don't have to be Jesus or a prophet to see what Jesus saw. You know, if you tap into that oneness of all, you're able to see the pattern. And you know, like these are the end days, and it's already happening because good would inevitably reign. And the Bible talks about these end days. I do believe that things are going to get much worse for the human race in order, but then eventually, inevitably, things will get much better. But in order for things to get much better, things are going to have to get much worse. And this worseness that I'm talking about is it's more so like to shake us up even more, to like in your face, like this is not working. See, this patriarchy, it's not working. Homophobia, it's not working.
I
This
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on the individual level. I think for people who have not woken up, their lives are going to get worse
yes,
before they can wake up. But I think at
yes.
a collective level, we've already gone through the worst part. We have already gone. I'm going to read something to you that was written about. This is my partner Ab and I read this. This is from one of my favorite books. I'm not know if you're familiar with it.
I'm reading right now. It's
Okay,
currently reading it.
I'm going to read from you from the very last chapter of the very first, the last paragraph of the first chapter. It's called "The Awakening, the Flowering of Human Consciousness." The inspiration, a new heaven and a new earth. The inspiration for the title of this book came from a Bible prophecy that seems more applicable now than any other time in human history. It occurs in both the Old and the New Testament and speaks of the collapse of the existing world order and the arising of a new heaven and a new earth. We have to understand here that heaven is not a location, but refers to the inner realm of consciousness. This is the esoteric meaning of the world, and this is also the meaning in the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah, I remember reading that. I'm still reading that actually. But yep, Eckhart Tolle is definitely by far one of my favorite people on this planet. I actually met him once last year. You know, yeah, but yes, he definitely honed in on the whole. There's a place in the same book that he talks about how it follows the same evolutionary pattern that the Earth has had. You're either going to have to evolve or you die. You
That's
know.
what I'm talking about. When you say it's going to get worse, if those of you who do not evolve by the process of evolution and elimination, you will die. You will physically die because it's not an earth or a world you're going to be comfortable in. You know,
Mhm.
it's just because you don't have individual power that you think you need to enjoy your life. You can't wield your meanness and your hate and your power any longer to get your way. And I've already seen people pull away from institutions and organizations for that very reason. They can't get their own way, so they leave because they want it their way.
Mhm.
And I think that you're exactly right. It's going to get so painful for some people; they're going to die. But
Yeah.
and that's not anything changed in human history. People that's on and on and on. But I think one other thing that I would love to comment on with you and talk about is that I believe, based in that book too, is that I think we human beings have evolved. You and I have evolved more in our lifetime than any other time in the history of humankind since the beginning of humankind. Evolved as a species of humanity toward this higher level of consciousness. What are your thoughts about that?
Are you talking about you and I as individuals
Well,
compared?
we can always start with ourselves. But I'm talking about humanity as a whole. The number
Okay.
of people, the number. I mean, this is the thing. When I woke up to the fact that I'm the universe earlier this year, the highway is full. I found you. The expressway is packed with people leading this movement. I'm not alone. You're not alone. And when you get in here, you're aware this place has really got a lot of momentum and a lot of excitement.
Um, it's hard for me to know because what we're going through is the rebirth, which means that this is not the first birth. I don't know what the world looked like several hundred years ago before the internet, before slavery, before this and that. Yes, the heart of man has always been wicked, as the Bible said. You know, people have always been engulfed by the ego, which is the ancient serpent. But I also do want to say that yes, the people in the past perhaps may not necessarily have had the technological advances that we have today, but they could have also have had less distortions and distractions to be closer to the pure form of spirituality, which is oneness with God. So I couldn't really confidently tell you because I wasn't there 500 BC, things like that. But yes, I would say that right now, within the century, I do think that there is a huge rise in consciousness, and it's only going to even get more elevated as
Yeah,
we go through the century.
and that raises. I want to go a little over. That brings up a point back. For example, you look at the pyramids. I believe those were made from the human mind. And this is another thing that I have become more and more aware of as I've gotten more and more awoke to the self that I'm the universe. The universe doesn't just mean life forms here in our galaxy. It means life forms throughout the universe. And the more I have personally connected with the universe and gone into that space, I am clearly in communication with other life forms. And they're in communication with me. We might call them angels, but they're in communication and they're here to support us and help us. That's what they're here for. They're evolved so much more than we are on planet Earth that they're here to help us evolve into a more loving humankind and a human race that's welcoming. Right now, they try to come get close to us and they shoot them down like they're enemies, because they don't know what they are. But they're there. We're not those, and they know how to travel through time and space. And I think it's going back to the thing about the pyramid, about the Egyptians creating the pyramids. If you look at there, it is designed exactly in 432 pyramid shape to align with the universe, the energy of the universe. It is like a chakra of the universe. And so you're right. I think at that time, human beings, we think they were behind us. They may not have had the technology, but somehow they built those pyramids, and they're pretty amazing. They're pretty darn amazing. So we needed some help from the universe to do that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the talk about the Egyptian pyramid is one that is so controversial. So many people have different opinions about it. And one of the things that I have read, in the past, is that the way it was built is through communication. And this kind of coincides with Jesus's teaching as well. When it comes to miracles, you have to understand that everything is alive, but not alive in the way we understand it. But like the connectedness of all, like everything is a one piece. And if you're able to transcend beyond physical being, and into spirituality, you realize that you are part of that all, and you can communicate with all. This is what Jesus was able to do, hence why we perceive them as miracles. You're able to communicate with water molecules and command the water molecules to shift to look like wine molecules. You're able to command this tree to sprout and do this, or whatever you call it, right? So there are theories that people who created the pyramids in the past were able to do that, just that, communicate with the rocks, and the rocks, what would look physically impossible and heavy to us, because I've seen those rocks in person. They're very heavy to the human mind, which is very finite, tiny compared to infinity of the spirit, right? It becomes very possible because you're able to communicate with that oneness, the spirit, the spiritual essence that courses through you and also through that rock, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, exactly. I mean, it's the same creative energy that created you and I as the human being.
Yes, and if you can tap into that, you can command it, you can talk to it, you can while respecting that spirit as well, when it's done with love, which is what Jesus did, because even though Jesus could perform those miracles, he didn't abuse those miracles because he knows that there's checks and balances in the
Well,
spiritual realm.
you can't miracle with love. It's
Yes.
impossible. You can't. That's what I love about the whole idea of manifesting. If you're trying to manifest something because you want to drive a nice car, good luck. I don't think the universe cares what kind. But if you're trying to raise $1 million, like we're trying to do, to build a church in Africa for LGBTQ people to live safely, that's the kind of thing the universe can begin to help you manifest. And we're doing that. Yesterday we made an intention to manifest $1 million. And we got an offer of $5,000 that day.
Wow.
Somebody came up to me and said, and a stranger came up to me, and we had we were at the diocese. I was sitting there by myself, looking out the window, having a cup of coffee, and this guy says, "Can I sit down?" I said, "Sure." So he sits down, he listens to my story. I tell him what I'm doing in Africa. He says, "Would $5,000 help?" I said, "Absolutely." He says, "You don't know this about me, but I am the chair of Oasis, which is the outreach ministry, the LGBTQ outreach ministry for the Diocese of Newark. And I want to give you $5,000, but you need to write us a grant. And I'm going to send you an email and tell you exactly what you need to do to get the money." That's how we manifest $1 million. We don't judge the 5,000. Well, I asked for $1 million, I only gave you 5,000. I say, I am grateful for 5,000. And I'll be grateful for the next 5,000. I'll be grateful for the next $25 because it's a gift from the universe to support our mission. Does that make sense?
Yes, I totally understand 100%. Unfortunately, a lot of people have taken this whole manifestation, what is it called? There's a whole documentary on it. Law of attraction. A lot of people have taken it out of context. You attract this, it's so selfish and ego
The law of
consumed.
attraction. If you're selfish, you're going to attract other selfish people.
Yeah.
If you're loving and kind, you're going to attract other loving and kind people.
One of the episodes that I did on my YouTube about 2 years ago is talking about manifestation. Whatever you're manifesting has to be selfless, and it has to be in betterment of yourself. Like, it has to be better in you, like selflessly. But also, most importantly, I think this part is very important. A lot of people don't consider this is you need to be open-minded. Whatever it is that you're asking for the universe, you need to be open-minded enough to receive it in whatever form the universe sees it best for you. So yes, you can be manifesting a husband, a man or whatever, right? But be open-minded enough for the way the universe brings that man to you. If you are hung up in your head that, oh, it has to be a man that looks this way, this has to do this, all of that. That may not necessarily be the best for you. And the universe is going to manifest the most compatible with you, all things considered. But with your ego state, you miss the point. Without the ego, you actually see not only is this what the universe manifesting the best for me, the person that I had in my head, you can actually see clearer how that person would lead you in hell and keep you in hell
Yeah.
because it was not meant to be.
Yeah. If
I
you're
don't know if that makes
trying
sense.
if you're trying to manifest a husband, manifest the energy of what the person you want to live with is how it's treating you. Manifest a husband that loves you, respects you, and loves you back. That's how you manifest. You want to be attracted to someone who loves you and you love them, and let the rest of it leave the rest of the universe. And they're probably not going to look like the person you think they are. They're probably not going to look like this. So before we sign up, we've gone over a little bit, but I've had so much fun. I knew I would because I would love to do another show, or maybe a separate show, just on maybe 3 subjects of the Bible, and talk about 3 of the wisdom teachings together sometime in the future with you. That would be a lot of fun, I think.
Yes,
And kind of go back and forth from 2 mystics. That's how I define a mystic. It's not something that's gone off into the woods and gotten into the mountains and found God. It's the realization that you don't have a belief system anymore. I don't believe in anything. I believe in no thing, like the Buddhists. I sure don't believe in a thing some people call God. It's a noun. I don't believe in that. But what I do experience, and what I think you're talking about, I experience God in my life. I experience God living through me as a mystic, and I'm able to tap into that resource to create my future, create our future. So,
totally agree. Totally agree. So basically, what we're doing is trying to reconnect back to Eden.
we're connecting back to Eden. We're connecting back home to Eden.
Yes.
Home to Eden. That's beautiful. And so, Uche, before we close out, tell us a little bit I see you've got Let's Talk About Us with Uche as your podcast. How is the other way people, how do people find you if they want to get to know you and maybe hire you to help them with some coaching?
Yes. I am, like I said, I'm the host of the podcast and YouTube. You can find me on YouTube and any major podcast at Let's Talk About Us with Uche. Uche is UCHE. My website is theuche.com. THEUCHE. So, like I said, I am a life coach focusing on Blacks, Africans, and African diaspora queer people who are trying to get their lives back together and knowing how to and learning how to navigate through systemically racist and systemically homophobic world. So if that is you, please feel free to reach out to me on my website to book a session if you're interested. And you can also email me at let's talk with Uche at gmail.com. My LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook are LTAU with Uche. And my Instagram is UC_images.
That is wonderful. And thank you so much for being on the show. And if you want to reach out to me, and I'd love to meet you and talk more about this, anybody out there listening to this, the easiest and the best way to find me is Linktree Martin_Cowart. You'll find everything you want, all my programs, how to meet me. It's all very simple under one roof. Linktree at Martin_Cowart. That's where you'll find me. Linktree Martin_Cowart. So thank you so much, Uche, for joining us, and may love and prosperity prevail.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Martin.
Thank you for being here.